Welcome to Woman On. I'm Maxie McCoy, your host, and we are halfway through the season. This season, as you know, we are talking to the women and people making 2020 actually somewhat inspiring. I know it's crazy to believe, but they are out there and we have been talking to them. And this episode is gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna be a little bit fun. We are not talking to anyone today. Now, before you go and turn off the podcast or stop watching, I promise not to bore you over the next maybe 40 minutes, half hour, we'll see. But we wanted to check in with you. We wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit and tell you some things happening behind the scenes, how we're feeling about these amazing people that we've been talking to. And we've been getting so many questions from our community, from our listeners, from our viewers, and we wanted to take a second to just chill, to take a breath, and to answer some of those questions and really be here and speaking directly to you and with you, because without you, we wouldn't be here. And we are so, as we like to say, batshit grateful. I know that I am beyond, and we're going to get to all of that and then some. Let's hit some questions from the community. It was hard to pick a few, but we only did pick a few. Y'all are going to notice a little theme, not for any real reason other than we've done 5 episodes, but 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is going to be a little theme here today. We're going to do a little top 5 countdown, 5 things that are on my mind, that are on the team's mind, that are really showing up in our community. And time is ticking on, unbelievably. 2020, I do not know how it is about to be November, but turns out time keeps going. So let's start with a little mailbag of questions. We've got them from our community on social, from our members in the collective. You all have hit me up on my DMs on Instagram, and well, we're gonna answer them now, which I'm very excited about. Because, I get to ask all of the questions to all of our guests. It's like literally my dream life. But now you guys get to ask the questions to me, from me, of me, and hopefully I'll have some answers that don't totally suck. Okay, so first we have Amy in LA. She said, how are women dialing back? How are we moving away from the hustle mentality? Well, Amy in LA, thank you for asking that first and foremost. This whole hustle culture is something that it's been on my mind for a long time, ever since, really for me in the work that led up to writing my book, You're Not Lost, of just what does it look like to hustle with heart is kind of what I always thought about it and called it. We live in this culture where everyone is just obsessed with how can we get further? Where is achievement going to get us? What goals am I going after? What's happening? And I think that this year has really been a turning point in that, of realizing that our foundation has to be strong. We have to move away from this rat race of constantly going and constantly achieving and constantly getting better, and allowing ourselves to evolve and evolve naturally and evolve because we're evolving. I think, Joe Encarnacion in episode 4 on owning your sexuality, she was talking about that. Like, how can we continue to grow? Sometimes that means unlearning. Sometimes that means unraveling. It doesn't mean that you stop moving forward. Hi, woman on. It just means that sometimes that means staying in place. It means shining a spotlight on patterns going on in your head, patterns going on in your life. Really acknowledging with yourself that, the next thing, the next goal, the next person, the next follower, it's not going to change who we are, how much we like our life, we have to, we really have to come back to center, come back to being anchored. Trust me, by the way, not easy. Hustling is the easy thing to do, right? We have the badge of busy and think that the busier I am, the more that I must matter. And I think, this year, especially, when the way that I heard someone describe it was like, we're all on this wheel, right? And we're going and we're going and we're going, and we had our life a certain way and we're going some more. And then we got effing kicked off. And some of us were like dizzy and disoriented and, oh man, I want to get back on that wheel and just keep going. And there were others who, chose to stand up, get our equilibrium and say like, I don't actually want to do that. I want to invest in the people around me. I actually want to be home more than I'm home. I want to, not be on a plane every week. I know that I had that reaction. I was like, oh, I always thought that I just had to travel this much, but in fact, I don't actually like it. And so I'm finding, just a new rhythm and a new pattern. And so I think that, some of that dialing back that Amy's asking about, it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of peeling back on the excess to get to what really matters. Who are the core people? What are the core relationships? What are the pursuits that energize us out of process, but not out of outcome? And that's something I'm not only seeing in myself, I'm seeing in my peers and my friends in our community. To just, it kind of threw us back in a really abrupt and in a difficult way to simplifying our life, and then really identifying those decisions and if they worked for us. So I hope that answers your question, Amy in LA. Okay, Rebecca in DC, what have been your, in all caps, okay, so your biggest personal learnings in launching Woman On? We don't have all day, or I would be here all day trying to explain what this has been like. The amount of personal learnings that have gone into bringing Woman On to life is just, there aren't enough hours. I feel like I learn a new lesson every minute of every day with every choice. I will say, like, at a big sweeping answer, is I've relearned lessons on vulnerability that I didn't anticipate learning in this. I was just so excited to have the team together, my brilliant team, who I'm going to tell you more about in this episode specifically, but have these people and have this this idea really dialed in, and to bring this up and into the world with leaders that I've worked with in the past, leading our small groups. Lisa and I, who have been working on different versions of this, which I'm going to talk to you about, before it needed to be all digital, working with members and readers of my book who are part of our community, and talent, some of these amazing women that I've interacted before that we're now bringing into these episodes. And there's just, I forget how vulnerable you are and you become when you put something out into the world. And I found the way that vulnerability showed up for me at first was almost in the mentality of scarcity. Like, is it enough? Are we doing enough? Are there enough people here, enough people listening? Am I creating enough content? Are we asking good enough questions? It was just like enough, which really is from, it comes from a mentality of scarcity. And it's just, you have a lot of eyeballs on you, and you want it to live up to what you have in your mind, and what the team onboarded for, and what the women paid for, and what viewers tune in for. And it's like, it just reminds me, it's fucking hard to build things. For me, that biggest personal learning is that to engage with your dreams, it's gonna make you vulnerable. It's gonna make you soft. It's gonna hurt sometimes. You're gonna let yourself down. You might let other people down, but that is where you learn. It's the same thing in love, in relationships. Like, we want those things so bad, but to really engage with them means that there will be hard conversations and there will be pain, and it won't all go how we think it's going to go. But that's how you get better. And you, in relationships, you have better conversations and better fights and better understanding after hard things. In building a business, we've learned so much that we're going to implement in season 2, that, season 1's not perfect. And that's okay. And, for me, it's funny because we titled this season Doing Your Best. Like, we're just doing our best, right? And the amount of times Lisa, who's my business partner and executive producer, and everything that you see here is from her genius brain, is oftentimes having to slap me, like, you're doing your best, we are doing our best. And so, the same message that we are hopefully bringing to you through these conversations are the same lessons that I'm really having to internalize and to learn myself, to just keep showing up, keep doing my best. And that's going to mean that I'm really vulnerable in this process. Sherry in Austin wants to know, what is your vision for this meaning Woman On? Whew, okay, vision. Here's the vision. As you know, we are bringing voices to you through these episodes, in the 5 that you've heard and the ones that you haven't yet, that I can't wait to bring to you, that are women that maybe you know and maybe you've heard of, or maybe you've seen one of them or follow one of them before, but maybe not. And that was the point. We really wanted to bring voices, women who are on the rise, who are doing incredible work where they're at in their communities for what they stand for. But they may not be the person on every TV circuit, on every show circuit, on every speaker circuit. And so the vision in that is, and this is truly, this is like a insight into my world. I am a facilitator of women's stories. I exist to bring our stories to light, to take you back to yourself. I think when you hear the truth in someone else's story, it shows you a truth in your own. And facilitating us to that wisdom is my absolute favorite thing to do. And in amplifying these voices and these stories, I am one vessel and tool in this show, but the idea is that Woman On becomes a bigger umbrella. So it's not just this show and my voice and, these small groups that are happening every week around these conversations and wisdom. It's then Jacqueline's show and her voice and her lens on the world. And then all of these small groups and worksheets and learning around hers. And then Sherry, you, Sherry, asked this question. It's your show and your voice and all of the small groups and learning and really diving into the wisdom around what you bring to the world. Because as a facilitator, as a host, as an interviewer, I'm with one lens, right? But we want many of those lenses under this umbrella. Okay, we have a question. Unknown, they didn't put their name on this one. I can see why. Your favorite convo so far? My favorite conversation so far. Okay, so first of all, that's fucking unfair. I have loved each of the 5 conversations that you have listened to or watched, and if you haven't, you have to go back and listen to these. There are so many layers to each of these conversations. I mentioned Joe's on owning your sexuality. We talked about that, and we talked about what it's like mothering, what it's like, being in line with your values as a business owner. With Bethany, we talked to them about not only body neutrality, but gender non-conforming. We talked about running their business. We talked about where they were and where I was when we first met and the changes over time. We talked with Jessica about astrology, but also, what it's like to be writing on the internet and dealing with social media. It's just, each conversation has had so many gems that, you know, while we have this one umbrella, as we are as women, there's so many things that we care about, and being able to, you know, bring out some of this expertise that may not be that guest, like what they're teaching on or what they're writing on, but really what they're living. It has been, yeah, it has really been so fun. And, you know, for me, in all honesty, you know, I have built my career in a world that is like very much about, you know, women's leadership, women's careers. And so even Woman On is really expanding me to share more here that I have never shared, right? Like in my conversation with Jo, I was telling her about being on stage in the vagina monologues, and a lot of these issues around women's sexuality that I'm very passionate about and haven't necessarily fit the like box of Maxie's brand before. And Woman On is a place that's allowing me to expand into a lot of these conversations that I feel really strongly about, but that maybe haven't been the box I've been known for before. And that has been both really fun. It's also been a place that Lisa, for example, has had to push me and remind me to lean into, so I'm not having the same conversation that I've been having for 10 years, which also means that I have to get more comfortable, more vulnerable, sharing pieces of my story and of my journey that I haven't talked about publicly before. And so, you know, for me, that's really been new and really been fun. Like even in our most recent episode with Jessica, she did a reading with me and my partner Charlie and me and my business partner Lisa. And, you know, even just having a photo of him on the internet and talking about my own romantic relationship was new. I don't do that on my Instagram. I don't really do it in my weekly writings that I've, you know, been doing for a decade. So not a decade, but almost. We're getting there. So yeah, it's I have loved. I know that this is like such a answer, but I have loved so many of the conversations because of the dimensions of each of our guests and these magnetic lives that they're living. And oh, by the way, the lives that they're living are for such purpose and good. They are such servants, and as activists, as highly invested in a future that is inclusive as it should be, and creating change, and also being women and people in the world and how that shows up and what that looks like and how that's hard. And yeah, it's just, they have each, as you know, I look to bring out something in them that maybe they haven't spoken about a lot publicly before. I'm also finding those pockets for me that I'm sharing and learning that as I go. So yeah, I know, lazy answer. I love them all, but I really do love them all. And you know, y'all, if you haven't listened to some of them, go back. They're so fun. While you're on a walk, you can hit it on any of the podcast platforms. We're everywhere. You don't have to watch my face the whole time. Even though we are on YouTube. And since we're here, y'all subscribe, please. It really helps so much, and or write a review. And you know, we are forever grateful. And okay, this last question is from Jade in Alabama. Okay. Each episode, you ask your guests a pep text they've recently gotten. Can you read us one of ours? Okay. Jade, way to flip the script on me. Yes, I can. And for those of you who might be listening who haven't caught this, one of the segments for each of our guests in every episode is we ask them to read like the most recent, just super encouraging, like girl gang, got your back, emotional support. Like, what is that message that they've gotten that has really just been what they needed at the perfect time? And yes, Jade, I will read you one of mine. My girl, Amy Elisa Jackson, she is not only a dear friend, but someone that I so look up to wildly, and has always had my back, and hopefully I have hers. And she teaches me so much just in how she shows up. She's so good at sending me, it's just like quick DMs on Instagram of things that she is finding inspiring is like, girl, I think you need this too. This message from Amy Elisa Jackson, it was posted on Well Read Black Girl, and it's from Cleo Wade, who is just an incredible writer and poet and human. It is entitled With Eyes Closed. I hold myself tightly and say, I am in this with you. I am here for you. No matter what happens, I will take care of you. Doing this is me, choosing to be on my own team. Doing this is me, learning to hold myself down through even a hurricane. Doing this is how I'm able to live my life rather than let my life live me. Self-intimacy is self-care. Self-care is self-love. Whew. That one really hit me. And then Amy Elisa put in quotes, I am in this with you. And, you know, I think that end where it says, you know, self-care, self-intimacy is self-care. We talked about this with Jessica in episode 5. And, you know, because Jessica wrote a book called Astrology for Real Relationships. And one of the things that I talked to her about is the through line of Jessica's book really was about intimacy with self. And the more that we can get to know ourselves and get to know what's going on, the more, just the more we can understand how to be in relationship with other people. And, you know, for me, my brain has been running like fast, not always like truthful things going on in my brain, like not always the most loving things going on in my brain. And one of the things that I have picked up doing, I actually learned from Bethany, who was our guest from our second episode, Bethany Myers, in the Become Project, which is what is Bethany's business. And you do these workouts that they lead. And at the end, they have you kiss your shoulder. You go like that. And it's like the sweetest, I want you to do it right now. Just kiss your shoulder. Like that. Isn't it cute? It just makes you feel happy. It makes you feel like you're on your own team. Like you're with yourself, no matter, you know, like how untruthful the shit in your head is going, or what the swirl that's going on around you, or the judgment that you're placing on yourself, to just kind of like come back and say, I am in this with you, and that you being yourself. And I've said this to myself more times in the last week in the mirror and been kissing my shoulder, because it's just like feels like a lot right now. And it reminds me to come back, like we're on the same team. We're doing this together, me and you. And yeah, that pep text, which was a DM on Instagram, was just such a beautiful note from Amy Elisa, one of my dearest friends, that I just really needed at the time to remember, like, yeah, I've got me. And if I've got me, I'm good. And you know, it's sometimes easier said than done. We've got a countdown here. And what this countdown is 5 by 5, 5 by 5. We got 5 weeks to go, you know, in this season after this. And we have 5 things on our mind, on my mind, that we just, you know, wanted to have a conversation with you about. Because what's awesome about this show is that it, you know, while I'm talking to guests and I'm talking to my team, we are not doing this in a vacuum. Every Tuesday and every Thursday, I am meeting with the women in the Woman On Collective who are coming together every week. And we ask them, what's on your mind? What's going on? What did you take from this episode? Who do you want to hear from? What are the mountains that you are trying to climb? And I'm a big believer that you should never be building a business, building a product, building a show without really listening to who you are building for. It's the most important thing. If you know who you're building for, if you know what's going on for her, for me, us, it's a her, or them, and then you can, if you properly understand the problem, you can properly solve, you can properly come up with a solution. And so we've been listening, we've been taking notes, we have been writing things down. And these next 5 things that I'm saying are on my mind, on our mind. It's a collective mind, and we've been making note of them, and we figure that if it's on all the women's minds that we've been talking to week in and week out for the last 5 weeks, it's probably what's on your mind for the next 5. And first and foremost, by the time that you are watching and or listening to this, we will be, OMG, basically a week away from the election. There is not a conversation that I have with a human on this planet that doesn't involve some kind of conversation about the election. Obviously, I'm saying it's next week. It's in full swing. As we know, we have just record-breaking numbers about who is coming out for early voting, who's showing up for the polls. And I think that if you are feeling like you're scared, you're anxious, you have no idea what's going to happen, where is our country going to go, how is this going to turn out, who's going to show up, what's going to be on the other side of this, you are not alone. It is very much how I'm feeling. It is very much how this team is feeling. It is very much how our community is feeling. And, I think for me, we talked about this in our episode with Amanda Lippman, who is the founder of Run for Something, and she is all of her work is supporting young progressive candidates to be running for local elections. And why it's so beautiful is because the people who their candidates that they're supporting, there's hundreds of them, majority women, majority BIPOC, majority types of candidates that we historically haven't seen before, and they are showing up in numbers because we finally have the support and we are working towards representation in politics, so it stops being a whole lot of old white dudes who have been politicians their whole lives. And I was really moved when we interviewed Amanda because it reminded me, and this is something that I definitely have only valued recently in recent years. I would say I'm probably a little bit more recent than I would like to admit, is just how important our active engagement with democracy is. It is something that I think I've just taken for granted. Like, well, we make this big vote every 4 years and that's what matters. And it's like, no, those midterm elections are so wildly important. The elections that we're deciding about the school board are so wildly important. The change that we are wanting to experience really is happening locally, and we can't just show up for the big vote and be done. We need to be supporting candidates that are running locally. Our dollars shouldn't only be donated every 4 years, or phone banking every 4 years, or supporting campaigns for the big dogs, right? We really have to show up to support in the moments and in the small choices, because that is where change happens and that is where progress happens. And this is really, I wish it wasn't new for me. I wish that I could say, like, I knew this, I got this, I understood, and I just didn't. It hasn't been until recently that I've really understood how fragile democracy can be, and how painful in the long run complacency can be, and that we can create change no matter what happens in this election or not. And the fight doesn't stop there. The fight doesn't stop on November 3rd. The fight for progress has to be in every choice, in every vote, in every dollar that we give and continue to give, and the people that we encourage to run, in ourselves choosing to show up for that change too. It was such a powerful experience to be going through my ballot and, of my bubbles, because I went back and counted, my dark black pen bubbles. I had voted for 18 progressive candidates that were women, and many of them were women of color. And later that day, I had a call with an old professor. He's in his 80s. We talk every Thursday. I went to Lehigh, and yeah, we still keep in touch, and we have a little Zoom date every Thursday night. And I was telling him, I really felt the progress in that moment. I felt the outcome of people's work, like Amanda and like all of you who are showing up for this progress, because there were 18 women that I voted for on that whole ballot. And I just, I was in my pink Argent power suit they've teamed up with, supermajority, and I was like, yeah, this is women are the super majority in this country. And then, oh my God, it actually showed up on the ballot. That is a super majority. And it's still really with me, even though obviously we don't know the outcome yet. That is progress. Like, no matter what happens in the election, and obviously I feel very strongly about it, but that is something, and that is something that no matter where we land a week from today, we have to keep showing up for that, for more women running for office, for more people of color running for office, for people of different classes and sexualities and abilities and religions running for office, because we're going to change it, because we're changing the pipeline. Whew, election, big one. If you haven't watched episode 3 with Amanda Littman, do it. If you have ever considered running for something or know someone who should, send it to them. It's really an incredible discussion at how much can happen when we show up locally, when we show up consistently. And I think that's the lesson here. And that this big thing that's on our mind is just keep showing up. All right. 1 down, 4 to go. The 5 things on our mind. The second one. Oh, and I love this one. It's just fucking gratitude. Like, massive, massive gratitude. I don't know if I should have kept this one for the end, but here we are. Woman On originally, we were building and testing a lot last year. Every Wednesday for months, we were meeting here in San Francisco and just facilitating these small groups to understand what women needed, who they wanted to hear from, what was going on in their lives, how topics landed for them. And it was cool because women started coming on Wednesdays without even signing up or checking the schedule. They just knew we were there on Wednesdays. They were going to be there on Wednesdays, and it was consistent and, a consistent group of faces and consistent voices. And then 2020 hit, right? And all those ideas just become totally fucking null and void. And like everyone else, I think for me, it was, we're gonna have to go. I have no idea. 'Cause this vision that I had of, every week we're showing up in person, we're doing these interviews in front of a big audience, and then people are breaking off into their groups. None of that's a reality. It's not a reality anytime soon, especially at the beginning of this pandemic. And kind of took a while to just sit in the shit and figure out, well, what does this become? And, it became pretty clear pretty quickly. We could totally do this digitally. It will be none of what we tested, none of what we imagined, none of how we saw this going. And here we are, and so we got to work. We got to work really fast. We hit the ground running, getting a full-on show on, all platforms. Not only is it a TV show, you've also got, it's a show, it's a podcast, it's audio, visual, it's all of it, right? So you've got a show. You got a business that just got up and off the ground. We have leaders that are a part of this, helping us run our small groups and the curriculum that they need. We have our members and their needs. We have our guests, and it's just, there's so many components, and it is wild. The team that is bringing this to you are incredible and brilliant and creative and just don't get enough FaceTime with you, and I hope to change that because they are amazing. Lisa Raphael, my executive producer, my business partner, my, just woman on person, partner in crime, is, has just this incredible background in production, in women's media, in building for female audiences, and like any question you love, any brand vibe, website, like anything that you are like, that is so on point and gorgeous and beautiful and like smart, and for something bigger than all of us, that's Lise. You can just sing your praises to Lise right now. And then we have Betty Jean and Sharissa Wright, who we recently brought onto our team. Sharissa is our video editor and technical producer. She helps bring this visual show to life and is so talented. And, just you find some of this talent, you're like, God, I can't wait to see how and where they go over the years. That is Sharissa and Betty Jean. Betty Jean Bowles is our social media coordinator and fire. She is hopping on those reels. She is engaging our community on Instagram and just like keeping that ship going. It's not only this team, that is behind the scenes on bringing you the show. We have such an incredible group of women on leaders who show up every week, and they engage all of our members in really reflecting back on how this show shows up and how this wisdom from the guest shows up in someone's life, and what we can learn from it, and what is potentially hard about applying boundaries or asking for our needs to our own life, and having, the same group of 8 women that you get to show up and talk to and get to know every week for 10 weeks. That wouldn't be possible without this group of leaders. If you want to come join the collective, you will be even more inspired than them and then some. They're really special humans who have helped get this off the ground, and help me make this better as we go, and make our team create something better as we go. So leaders, men, those people. And then, we're just wildly, as I said, grateful for you. And we are all ears. If you have ideas, if you have questions, if you have confusion, if you have feedback, like hit us up. We are listening. Because it's just, it's a journey. It's a journey that none of us do alone. And I sure as hell haven't. So while you see me, there is a whole treasure chest of genius behind this that I get the really incredible gift of, bringing it over the last inch of the line that you see, but really the other 26 miles is from a powerful ass group of women. Ass was not necessary in that. But yeah, I think, we don't often take enough time to just stop and look at what we're grateful for and see those moments, and see the mountains that we have moved. And I know that this is true in your life, like the mountains that you've moved, what you have done this year, even if that just means surviving. Be grateful for what you have done and what you have created, and the fact that you are still here, you are still showing up, you are doing your best, and find the gratitude in that. If you want to kiss your shoulder, fucking do it. Because there's always going to be more to do, but really finding a place to be grateful and do it consistently. I've got my little like cashier's notebook every night. I write 3 little things that I'm grateful for. And especially as we come into this Thanksgiving season, right? Gratitude is everywhere, and we're thinking big, all these things that we want to give thanks for. But my favorite thing is just to do it in the little moments, because when you go back and you look and you're like, yeah, the most beautiful parts of my life are in these tiny moments and conversations, and they add up. And so just, take a minute. And if you are stressed and you are overwhelmed, like, look at what you've done. Look at what you are still doing. Look at, who is helping you do that, and be grateful for them, because being grateful for where you're at will get you farther. And trust me, there's always more to do. always more to do. Okay. We got our third thing that we're thinking about in the next 5 weeks is dun, 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 dun. Some of you might be grateful for this, some of you might be not. Family. This is something that I have, totally been trying to navigate through myself. I have a family that is just, they are my best friends. I love them. I would not be who I am without them. And at the same time, we are not the same people. Like, we do not have the same beliefs. We vote differently. We think differently. We are all very our own people. And, I remember 4 years ago, we were on a family vacation, and I truly couldn't get over some of the political differences and how I felt like I was living one reality with what, the incoming president had said and done about women. And my whole life's work is about lifting women up and all women. And that just like didn't have the same weight for some, members of my family than it did me. And I just like couldn't get past it. And I remember getting really mad and saying a lot of things that I didn't mean, and sobbing and angry and yelling and not my best self. And I remember having a conversation with myself of, like if I don't find a new path forward, if I don't look at how I'm reacting, if I don't look at this situation differently, this kind of anger for people that I really love and respect could be quite damaging over time. And, I know that I wasn't alone in that. I had a lot of friends who were dealing with the exact same thing. And I'm sure many of you might have, whether it's a close family member or a friend or a distant family member, whomever, this stuff is coming up again, right? And it's coming up in really pretty potent ways. And so, every week I facilitate conversations, not only with our community, which you can be a part of, but also with our leaders. Every week we come together to understand what's going on for them, feedback they have as they're leading these conversations, and kind of what's happening. And I was given such a gift from Jacqueline. Everyone gives me such gifts, but Jacqueline was saying that in her own life, one of the paths that she's taking and how she's approaching this is to really listen, to ask questions, to come from a place of being like really anchored where you're at. And then if there's an opening and it seems like someone is receptive and there's a place to give new information, truthful information, educational information, then that is the place to do it, to share info when you see the opening. And for me, it just reminds me that like sometimes we need to put down the sword. And putting down the sword doesn't mean that we don't fight for what's right. It doesn't mean that we don't fight for what we believe in. It just means that maybe the sword's not the tool. And maybe, like, you think about a river over time, it's gentle, but it's strong, and it's water, but it's intense, and it can carve through a mountain. It can make a path forward without dynamite, without a big explosion, without a big combustible fight, right? And so I've really been thinking about that as it comes to family and friends that we might be seeing for the first time in a long time. The thing that, and this isn't right for everyone, but I am really thinking about Jacqueline's advice and how I interpret that, which is to put down the sword, to listen, to be compassionate, to educate, to provide truth, to provide perspective, and to still love and to come from a place of love and listening and compassion. And there's a lot of change that can happen there. There's a lot of good fight that can happen there. And it doesn't have to be a huge violent explosion. We don't have to fight violence with violence. And that is just, if that resonates with you, you take it and you run with it this holiday season. All right. The fourth thing in these 5 weeks, which obvi probably goes without saying, we are just hearing a lot about just the idea of health and what that looks like on so many different dimensions, not only with COVID-19, but majorly with mental health, with maternal health, with the care crisis going on in this country, with the stressors that are just feel like they are building up and all around us. I am concerned. It is something for me that, like, I know by listening to all of these women and people coming together every week with us, by listening to our guests, by listening to our leaders, by listening to my team, we are all fighting our own battle to stay healthy physically, to stay healthy mentally, to keep our relationships healthy, to keep our mind healthy. And it is fucking hard right now. It has been, I feel like the hardest it has ever been for me personally, and to stay above the line in my own mental health, to keep up routines of self-care. And I don't mean that in like a goop way. I mean that in like a just like moving my body, being present, not being so in my head, and also like staying healthy, but not like worrying too much about getting COVID, but like really fucking worried about it all the time. Like, it's just like, how do we live our life? And then the stressors that are all around us. Like, I might have a week that I'm good, but then something is melting down, or someone is really unwell that I love. And like, how do I just feel like as soon as we get like kind of okay and strong, like something is going wrong for someone else. And that is hard. That is a level, we are experiencing a level of macro stress on our health, on our mental health, on the health of those around us, and all these dimensions that I think for many of us, we haven't ever been through, and the types of stress that creates. And I think like we're seeing that stress in the numbers, right? That one of the things that is just very, very heavy for me in all of this, as we think about health, is just the health of our women, and how much pressure and how many stressors are on women, especially women of young kids, women who are moms, women who are caretakers. I said the care crisis earlier, but it's so much of this burden is falling on women. It doesn't even mean that you have to have kids in order to feel it. Like, we are absorbing this stress, and it's showing up. It's showing up in the numbers. I mean, there's been over 800,000 women who have left the workforce this year. It's 4 times the amount of men that left this year. We're going backwards, and it's a lot. And, we can only do what we can do individually, but we've got to do more than that. We are expecting women to solve this on their own individually in each of their lives, in each of their homes, in each of their relationships. The onus is all on us, but really, like, why the fuck are there not structural changes, structural support that can release that burden? So if you're listening to this and you know a woman who is a caretaker of her parents, of her kids, of her community, reach out to her. What goes around comes around. Like, we all need to give individual support to our community while the structural changes are still in progress. But the advice that I sit with when all of those stressors are mounting on mental health, maternal health, personal health, health, COVID health, all of it is literally a day at a time. It is a day at a time. Do the best that you can do to get through the day, to take on that day's stressors, and tomorrow you're going to do it again. But if you look at the next month, you look at the next 5 months, you look at the next year of doing this, we won't get through. We've just got to make the best possible choice that we can for ourselves at this point in time. And if you feel like shit, It's all right. Totally okay. Get the support system around you, get the army around you, get the mental health counselor, therapist, support group, whatever you need. Because, like, yeah, I don't know anyone who feels that great right now. But what matters is that we don't let that stop us, and we don't let that make us feel like shit. The fact that we feel like shit, basically. You've got this. We've all got this. All right, the fifth thing, the 5 and 5. We are hearing this it is on my mind, it is on our mind, it is on the community's mind. Last but not least, where do we go from here? What does the new normal look like? What's next? How much of this is unknown? Is this going to be what our life is? Is this it? Like, do I want it to be it? Do I want to sit here in all of this? It's confusing. We're all very unsure. No one knows. None of us have been here before. We've never lived in a year like this, in a climate like this, in a pandemic like this. It's new, and it is our normal though now, and there's nothing normal about it, so I don't want to normalize it. But we are, kind of thinking about, where do we go from here? And I've been thinking a lot about this in my own life, and I thought about it a lot this summer, because a lot of the work that I had invested in, I was building out programming for one company that was all physical based. I had been working on, all of these ideas for Woman On that originally were physically, like in-person group based. I was working on a second book idea that was pre-pandemic, but like wasn't that new or interesting or fresh once the pandemic came around. And like, long story short, everything that I was working on basically crumbled all in a short month. And that it wasn't an easy place to be in. Fortunate and very privileged, and had the financial foundation to be able to weather it, which I know a lot of people don't have. And I still had to remind myself that I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't failing or flailing. I was being given an invitation to look at my work and to create something fresh and actually needed going forward. But I didn't know what that was. And where I was at just felt like everything was crumbling down, and I didn't know where I was needed. And the thing that I can tell you about that is, like, when you are given an invitation and things are crumbling and they're not going how you planned them, and even if it's really bad, something is building from that, and you may not see it here. You may not see it where you're at. You may not have all the answers, but you're not supposed to. So the answer to where do we go from here, I don't fucking know. You don't have to fucking know either. None of us know. And sometimes that's the point, to just take it one step at a time, to build, to make, to decide, to show up in one increment, in one step, see how it feels, and don't worry about where it all leads. You don't have to know where it's all going in order to make a really good choice right now. Those are the 5 things. That's very much, just a lot of the topics that we're hearing in our community as we go through these next 5 weeks, what we're thinking about. I hope there's some nuggets of lessons in there. Know that I'm going through this too. The women we're talking to are, our guests are. So take a breath, give yourself a kiss on the shoulder, show up for someone. And it's okay if it doesn't all feel good right now, but you're doing your best. We're all just doing our best. So keep going, keep loving, keep showing up, keep trying. That's what it means to Woman On. Thank you so much for for joining this episode. Remember, if you love anything here, subscribe, hit us a review, join our small groups. You can do that at womenoncollective.com, download your worksheet. And you know, I'm so grateful you're here because we have a lot of exciting conversations ahead. And if you have any questions or you want to drop us a line, it's hello@womenontogether.com. All right, that's it from me. Woman on.